This podcast is a work of historical interpretation. While we strive for accuracy, some aspects of history are open to interpretation and debate. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to Time Tellers, where history speaks and the past echoes into today. I'm Renee, and... Okay, if you're going to take 30 seconds in between each line, this is not going to work.
I was waiting to be introduced.
It's in the script. Read the damn script.
You haven't introduced me in a while.
It's because we basically changed our format. People liked having us both talk. I don't know why.
I don't like this format.
Well, they do.
I like the other format better.
Where you just made random comments that were not relevant?
That were kind of relevant. They were better than this.
Oh!
Well, I just mean the scripted. Like, I don't even like the ones I've done.
It's...
Most of them. And I'm Dan.
5 years later.
The last 5 years?
Yeah, apparently that's a great musical. I honestly don't know much about it.
Really?
Today we're taking a journey into into the story of one of America's most famous symbols, the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia.
You've probably seen it on field trips, textbooks, or even on postage stamps. It's iconic with that unmistakable crack, like Philadelphia. But how much do we really know about it?
Not nearly enough. This episode goes beyond the shiny legend.
It's not shiny.
It has spots that are shinier than others.
Yeah, where people keep touching them than they're supposed to.
Yes. We'll cover the circumstances of its creation, why it carries the word liberty, the mystery of its cracks, and the myths we tell about it and the people whose stories are tied to it. Famous figures, forgotten laborers, activists, and everyday Philadelphians.
Is that when they're not making cream cheese?
Or pretending their dad is Danny DeVito. Great show.
Or running up the steps at the art museum.
With their hands in the air.
Pretending they're Rocky. Yeah. It's a story of technology, politics, faith, protest, and preservation. And it's a story about how an object becomes more than metal. Never mind, I can't think of a metal joke that fast. It becomes a voice.
Let's start at the beginning with the casting of a bell that didn't quite ring true.
They went with the lowest bidder.
The Liberty Bell began not as a patriotic symbol, but as a practical object. In 1751, the Pennsylvania Assembly ordered a large bell for the new State House in Philadelphia, what we now call Independence Hall.
So not a revolutionary project.
Not at all. It was a provincial government order. The man behind it was Isaac Norris, Speaker of the Pennsylvania Assembly. Norris ordered the bell from the Whitechapel Bell Foundry in London, the same foundry that would later cast Big Ben.
Way to keep jobs in America.
Right?
Wasn't Hamilton big on that?
Ah, well, Hamilton was already dead. Wait, 1751? Never mind. Sorry, in my head I was thinking 1851. Pardon me, it's been a very long week. We were in 1751. I immediately corrected myself. I just jumped a century, okay? I did.
That's all staying in. And this is where the famous inscription comes in, right?
Yes, Norris chose the line from Leviticus 25:10, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof.
Does that apply to, the indigenous peoples?
Yeah, I think you skipped that sentiment. Although they were Quakers, so Quakers at least, like, comparatively had a better treatment of...
They still kicked them out.
I'm saying, like, they were more of a peaceful compared to...
them out.
To the Quaker-led assembly, liberty meant religious freedom and the colony's unique experiment in tolerance.
Couldn't they have just stuck to oats? Don't snap at me. So at the time, it wasn't about independence from Britain, but about religious liberty.
Exactly. That biblical inscription would later be reinterpreted, as all biblical inscriptions tend to be.
You mean made to fit their narrative?
Yes. But But in 1751, not 1851, it reflected Quaker ideals of freedom of worship.
Unless you're an indigenous people.
They didn't necessarily stop them from worshiping the way they wanted to. They just didn't let them do it on the land they were originally on. I mean...
Or killed them.
Well, I mean, the Quakers are the ones that are always conscientious objectors. I don't think they were known for violent... defensive maybe, not necessarily offensive.
And yet, they're the reason I can't buy my cider before 9 a.m.
Is that still a thing now?
Yes, because I was at Wegmans this morning, as you saw, and they had the new seasonal Blakes, the fall caramel apple, the new one for this year.
I thought most of those laws have gone to the wayside.
That one still exists.
Go figure.
Yeah. So at that time, it wasn't about independence from Britain, but about religious liberty.
That's what I just said, Dan. Wait.
And when the... Oh?
Where?
Oh, yeah. And when the bell arrived from London...
What is happening? Okay. It cracked almost immediately, like my sanity right now. According to the Pennsylvania Gazette of March 10th, 1753, when the bell was tested, it, quote-unquote, split by a stroke of the clapper.
So it got the clap and then it split?
Newspapers reported the disappointment, with some critics mocking the costly import.
So they imported it with a... Never mind. I'll stop. I'll at least get through the rest of this page. This must have been embarrassing.
It was. The assembly turned to two local founders, which they probably should have done in the first place. John Pass and John Stowe, because everybody's name back then was John, she says sarcastically, to melt down the broken bell and recast it. Their names appear on the bell today, Pass and Stowe, Philid, and then the Roman numeral for the year it was done.
Which is?
1753.
But what's the Roman numeral for?
Shush.
MDCCLIII.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
And did they get it right the second time?
Not quite. Their first recast was also poor. Contemporary accounts said it gave off a dead tone, so Pass and Stowe tried again, melting it down a second time. That third version is the bell we know today. Is this where the whole, three times the charm thing comes from, maybe?
I don't know. So the Liberty Bell is basically third times the charm.
I honestly didn't see that.
You didn't see what you wrote?
Oh my God. Yes, but with some quirks. Pass and Stowe added more copper, softening the tone, but making it metal more brittle. Some meteorologists today think that change helped set the stage for future cracking.
So even from the start, the bell's story is about imperfection.
Exactly, but it was hung in the State House steeple, and despite its less than perfect tone, it was put to work.
What kind of events was it used for?
Not July 4th, 1776. That's a myth we'll debunk later. Instead, the bell rang for routine assembly meetings to mark the death of figures like Chief Justice William Allen, and for special occasions like the ascension of King George III in 1761.
Were we his favorite subjects?
Until we decided to declare independence, and he got very mad at us and said, "We'll be back."
Oh, so he changed the subject and then we weren't his favorite subjects anymore?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now we want to come back, please? No, I'm just kidding.
And then he wanted to send a fully armed battalion to remind us of his love. And kill our friends and family.
Yeah, fun times.
Yeah. Can we go join Canada?
Work on my accent right now.
Hey? You need a Canadian accent?
I was meaning British, but go ahead.
So in the 18th century, it was more about duty than liberty.
In time, the words on its side would carry a weight far beyond what Isaac Norris intended. When Isaac Norris chose the Leviticus verse for the bell, that being proclaim liberty throughout all the land, onto the all the inhabitants thereof, he probably didn't imagine school children in 2025 would still be reciting those words. Except I've never had a student recite those words, ever.
Yeah.
For Norris, a Quaker, it was about the colony's charter and its protections of religious freedom, which is honorable and has good intention.
So the original idea of liberty was more about the freedom to worship as you choose than about democracy or independence.
Exactly. Pennsylvania was founded by William Penn as a haven for religious minorities, especially Quakers.
And Jedi.
They were persecuted in England, fined, jailed, even beaten for refusing to swear oaths. So liberty meant tolerance in worship, conscience, and assembly.
Unless you were here before them.
Yes. Although they were also well known for being anti-slavery as well.
Still doesn't make it cool to kick people out.
No, I'm just saying.
That makes the choice of Leviticus interesting. That chapter describes the Jubilee year when slaves were freed, debts forgiven, and land returned. To whom? To themselves? It's a verse about restoration and equality.
Right, and that dual meaning, the Quaker emphasis on conscience and biblical jubilee of freedom, made the inscription ripe for reinterpretation later. As I mentioned, abolitionists in the 1830s, suffragists in the 1870s.
Who cares about that?
Civil rights activists in the 1960s, they all pointed back to that same verse. And probably, maybe, I don't know, the Native American protest and reformer, that's not the words I'm looking for, of the 1970s.
Yeah. Yay for Alcatraz.
It's your turn.
But in the 1750s, the bell's job was a lot more ordinary.
Yes, in colonial Philadelphia, bells were like mass communication. The Liberty Bell, then just a State House bell, rang to call lawmakers to the assembly, to mark court sessions, to toll for funerals, and to celebrate royal birthdays. Because remember, we were still a colony at this point of Great Britain. One contemporary diary entry by a Philadelphia resident in 1761 described the bell pealing, quote, for several hours together, unquote, to celebrate King George III's coronation.
That's a little ironic, given how the bell would later become an anti-royalist symbol.
Very ironic. And here's another forgotten layer. The bell didn't ring itself. I mean, logical. Laborers, often apprentices, sometimes enslaved men, were the ones hauling ropes, keeping the steeple in repair, greasing the mechanisms, all that stuff. Their names are mostly lost to history, but without them, the bell wouldn't have spoken at all.
They couldn't have just got Ben Franklin to come up with something that would automatically ring it?
You would think, right?
Oh, he was too busy running around naked in England and France.
Mostly France, I believe, is where he did that.
Yeah, but remember, England is where he had all his dead bodies in his basement.
Right.
So, I mean, he was just having fun.
Oh, yeah, just fun.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yep. That's important. We remember Isaac Norris, Pass and Stowe, the assembly, but not the hands that actually kept it going.
Exactly. Philadelphia in the mid-18th century was a port city, built on labor, both free and enslaved. Enslaved Africans, indentured servants, and poor apprentices carried the day-to-day burdens. Their sweat helped the bell ring, but their liberty was denied.
So the words on the bell, unto all the inhabitants thereof, that didn't apply to everyone.
That's a contradiction at the heart of American liberty. We see this time and time again. A bell proclaiming freedom in a society where slavery and disenfranchisement were and are normal.
And then came the Revolution.
Yes, when tensions with Britain escalated in the 1760s and 1770s, bells became instruments of protest. They rang for gatherings, rallies, even the reading of boycotts against British goods. Philadelphia newspapers note that bells were rang on October 19, 1765, when news of the Stamp Act reached the colonies, an act that enraged colonists by taxing paper goods.
And the State House bell?
It was used often. One famous moment, July 8th, 1776. That's when the Declaration of Independence was first read aloud in the square outside the State House, and will also be read aloud partially on the PACA stage starting on September 18th by yours truly.
And just wait till nobody says anything and you just keep reading the entire thing.
Well, it's in the middle of a song, so eventually she'll start singing again.
You supposed to do that?
Okay.
Okay.
Bells rang across the city to call people together, and later traditions say the State House bell was among them.
But here's where the myth creeps in, right?
Right. The story that the Liberty Bell rang on July 4th, 1776, isn't true. The signing was private and no announcement was made that day. The bell may have rung on July 8th to summon the crowd, but we don't have any direct documentation.
So where did the July 4th ringing legend come from?
From a stort, also known as short story, written in 1847 by a writer named George Lippard. He spun a tale for a magazine about an old bell ringer anxiously waiting for the vote on independence, then rushing to ring the bell on July 4th. It was stirring, emotional, and totally fiction. Historical fiction at its finest.
But people believed it without having any facts?
What? They loved it. The story was reprinted in newspapers, school readers, and patriotic pamphlets. Good old American propaganda.
Yay.
By the late 19th century, Americans believed the Liberty Bell had literally rung out independence on the 4th of July. It was a myth, but myth with power.
So early revolutionary use, it rang for gatherings, for news, possibly for the Declaration reading, but not in the dramatic Hollywood way we imagine.
Exactly. It was a working bell in a working city. One 1776 letter by a Philadelphia Quaker woman named Sarah Logan Fisher mentioned the constant noise of bells during protests and troop musterings. For her, the state bell, house bell, was part of the uneasing clamor of wartime Philadelphia.
Okay, Karen.
Right.
I like that because it makes the Liberty Bell less of a frozen museum piece and more like a living, noisy part of daily life, like Renee.
Yes, it rang
Who belongs in a museum.
Yes, it rang for...
Well,
it rang for death, for joy, for rebellion, for monarchy. It was contradictory like the city itself.
And at some point it started to crack, like Renee.
We're not quite to the famous crack yet, but even in these early decades, the bell was fragile. Recast twice already with too much copper, it was more brittle than most. By the late 1770s, records note the State House bell wasn't always used for long peals because of its imperfect tone.
So the seeds of its later fracture were already there.
Yes, by the time it became the Liberty Bell in name, decades later, the damage was physical as well as symbolic.
Clang.
When people think of the Liberty Bell, they almost always think of the crack. That fissure down the side, making the bell instantly recognizable. But the truth is much more complicated than a single dramatic break.
It always is. So it didn't just ring once and shatter into silence.
No, not at all. The Liberty Bell's crack is a story in stages, with some mystery mixed in.
You gonna write a musical about it?
Go for it, Dan.
I said you.
No. Historians agree the bell was always prone to damage because of its unusual metal mix. Too much copper, not enough tin, as we said. That softer composition gave it a duller tone and made it brittle.
So when did it first crack?
That's the tricky part. There isn't a single documented moment. We know that by the early 19th century, the bell had what people called a hairline crack. It was still being rung for major events, but it needed constant repair.
Do we have any first-hand mentions?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. In 1817, a Philadelphia newspaper reported the bell had been repaired after injury by repeated tolling. By the 1830s, several accounts describe a narrow split that affected its tone but didn't silence it. So
it was more like a creeping crack?
Sort of like you. Exactly. One of the myths say the bell cracked on July 8th, 1776, that whole myth, while ringing for the Declaration of Independence, or just announcing that there was something to announce. Who knows exactly? But no contemporary sources mention that. In fact, the crack story doesn't appear until decades later, probably around the time that story started.
So the big crack on July 4th is a total invention?
Yes. What's more likely is the bell's crack worsened gradually from use. Bells of that size, that being over 2,000 pounds, often develop fractures after decades of heavy ringing.
Then what about the famous moment when it cracked when tolling for George Washington's birthday that I thought was fake because I thought it was when he died?
That you're saying that the myth was...
That's the myth that I always heard, was that...
that it was when he died, they announced it that way?
Well, that's when it cracked.
Oh. I've heard both.
I never heard the birthday one.
They don't mean like the day he was actually born.
No,
okay.
I'm just saying just as President's Day.
Yeah.
Well, what's now President's Day?
This one has a bit more credibility. The most widely accepted account is that in February of 1846, while ringing for Washington's birthday, I mean, that's obviously well after his death.
Yeah.
The thin hairline crack widened into the larger fracture we see today. The Philadelphia Public Ledger reported on February 26, 1846, quote, the old state house bell was cracked while ringing in honor of the birthday of Washington.
That might almost be like his 100th. What would have been his 100th? Just thinking time frame.
Yeah.
What year was he born in? I mean, late 1740s almost seems.
It seems right. I'd have to actually look it up.
Oh. Please pause while Renee researches. But she's refusing to sing the pause music.
Yeah, I thought it was 1732.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
But yeah, I mean, so it was over 100 years, but yeah. That's the best contemporary evidence we have.
So it rang for independence myths, but in reality, it broke honoring Washington.
Or broke more, to be more specific.
Yes, Washington's broke.
Yes, there is some poetic justice in that. Not only what he just said, but also the breaking and honoring of Washington. Washington himself had embodied both liberty and contradiction as a revolutionary leader and an enslaver. The bell cracked on his birthday, almost like a reminder of the fractures in America itself.
And how big is the crack? Aside from bigger than the Grand Canyon?
Yes. No.
Oh, okay.
The visible gap you see today is about 24.5 inches long.
So about 40 inches.
That's not the first break. After the 1846 widening, metal workers tried to repair the bell by drilling small stop drill holes at either side end of the fracture. That was supposed to prevent it from spreading further. But instead, it created the jagged zigzag gap that's so famous today.
Why didn't they just melt it down and do it again?
I don't know. That would have been a very good solution, I think.
Yeah. So the iconic crack is partly the result of a failed repair job.
Yep. What we call the crack is really a series of fractures plus these drilled holes. Without them, the fissure might have been a hairline barely visible.
So how did people in the 19th century feel about this broken bell?
Surprisingly or not surprisingly, they didn't rush to fix it. Instead, they embraced the crack as part of the symbol. In an 1852 editorial, the Pennsylvania Inquirer wrote, quote, the old bell with its fissure, I still don't know how to pronounce that word.
Fissure,
speaks more eloquently of freedom broken and restored than if its tone were still perfect, unquote.
That's fascinating. They saw the crack not as a flaw, but as a metaphor.
Or they were lazy. Just kidding.
Or both.
The fractured bell became a fractured nation's voice, especially in the decades leading to the Civil War, and I can definitely see that being a metaphor during those decades leading up to the Civil War.
Didn't the bell go on tour around this time? That metal tour?
70,000 tons of metal? No. Yes, beginning in the...
No, 2,000 tons of metal. No, not even. 2,000 pounds, 2 tons of metal.
Beginning in the late 1800s, the Liberty Bell was sent on traveling exhibitions to fairs and expositions, like New Orleans in 1885. World's Fair, anyone? Oh, wait, that's Chicago. That was...
You were there with H.H. Holmes?
No, that's Chicago. That's where that was. Yeah, I said New Orleans, but Chicago's the next on the list. Chicago in 1893. I was jumping ahead. Boston, 1903, and San Francisco in 1915.
That must have been risky, moving a fragile, already cracked bell across the country.
Yes, special rail cars were built to transport it, because only railroads could have done this, right, Dan?
Yeah.
And guards watched over it.
But yeah, a sleigh could have drug a 2,000-pound wheel of cheese.
And guards watched over it as though it were a treasure. Crowds lined up to see it. In Chicago, over 1 million people viewed the bell at the Columbian Exposition, which is what I was trying to get at too, but I got so excited about it, I said it mixed in with New Orleans. But anyways.
And all the jazz.
Newspaper accounts describe women weeping. I don't know about that. At the sight of it, children pressing close to touch the crack.
If you're not crying at the sight of it, you're not patriotic. So the crack became part of its fame, not a liability.
Right, and during those tours, another myth took root, that the bell rang for the death of every important American from Jefferson to Lincoln. In truth, however, by the mid-1800s, it was no longer functional. But the idea of the bell as a mourner for the Republic stuck in people's minds.
Do we know if people ever tried to fix it again?
There were proposals. In the 19th century, some suggested recasting it, like Dan did earlier, by melting it down and starting fresh, but Philadelphians resisted. They argued the crack was part of its identity, and in 1876, in a centennial pamphlet, one writer said, quote, "Were the fissure to be mended, the soul of the bell would be lost," unquote.
And how much crack were they on?
I'm not sure, but it was legal at the time. Actually, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking cocaine. That was put into coke. Anyways, go.
I'm drinking German Coke right now.
Okay, but we are running out of time.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are, Dan. Why do you not think I have like 1 billion things to do today?
Because you have 1,000,001.
Oh!
That's powerful. Like the scar made it sacred.
Exactly. By the early 20th century, preservationists began treating the bell less like an object to fix and more like a relic to conserve. It was displayed in Independence Hall, roped off, but still touched by countless visitors. You can see photos from the 1920s of tourists rubbing the crack for luck. It's not the Blarney Stone, people.
Well, just like the Mothman statue in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Oh, the crack is very shiny on that, too, from people doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I sent you pictures of that, right? So was it ever rung again after 1846?
Only symbolically. On special occasions, officials would strike it gently with a mallet, producing a dull thud rather than a clear peal. For example, in 1944, during World War II, it was tapped in a nationwide radio broadcast to promote war bonds. But no swinging clapper has struck it since the mid-19th century.
So the Liberty Bell we know today is a silent symbol.
Yes, and that silence speaks volumes. It reminds us of the limits of liberty, of voices silenced, of promises unkept, especially in our nation.
But at the same time, it still inspires.
Yes. Preservation efforts in the 20th century included building a glass pavilion near Independence Hall in 1976, and later the Liberty Bell Center in 2003. Today, millions visit each year. The crack is protected under climate control, kept from spreading further, similar to the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
You know, until Nicolas Cage stole it.
Yeah. And it's also free to go see. The whole little complex there. And people line up to take selfies with it. Proof that even in silence, the bell still speaks.
But the myths persist too. the ringing on July 4th, 1776, the sudden shattering, myths that say more about what Americans want the bell to be than what it really ever was.
Hum of bell.
By the early 1800s, the Liberty Bell was already cracked, already symbolic, but it hadn't yet become the Liberty Bell.
Ah.
Yes. That name, so familiar to us now, emerged from the movement to end slavery.
So before abolitionists, it was just the State House bell?
Yep. The shift began in the 1830s when anti-slavery societies in Philadelphia started using the bell's inscription, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof," as a rallying cry.
That's the Leviticus verse Isaac Norris had chosen back in 1751, right?
Yes. Norris meant it for religious tolerance, but in the 1830s, abolitionists read it literally. Liberty for all inhabitants had to mean liberty for enslaved women, men, and children, too.
So the words took on a new life.
They did. In 1837, the American Anti-Slavery Society published a pamphlet calling the cracked bell a, quote, mournful symbol of a land that proclaims liberty but denies it to millions, unquote. Fair. By the 1840s, abolitionist newspapers like the Anti-Slavery Record were using the phrase Liberty Bell to describe it.
So abolitionists essentially gave the bell its modern name.
Yep. And here's something often forgotten. A group of Boston women, yes, women, played a huge role.
Yay.
He's not as much of a woman-hating man as he makes out to be. The Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society, Female Anti-Slavery Fair, that's one name, big name, began publishing an annual gift book in 1839. They titled it The Liberty Bell.
I called it the Liberty Bell.
The Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society's Female Anti-Slavery Fair?
MASSFASF. The MASSF.
Okay.
Yeah. Or was that before acronyms were big?
Before.
Yeah, definitely. Like a yearbook for the movement?
Please keep going.
It's your line.
Oh. Exactly. It was a collection of essays, poems, and speeches sold to raise money for abolition. Contributors included famous names such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry Wadsworth, Longfellow, Lydia Maria Child, and Harriet Beecher Stowe. But also lesser-known women, organizers, teachers, mothers who wrote about the daily horrors of slavery and the dream of freedom.
So the Liberty Bell wasn't just an artifact in Philadelphia. It became a literary bell ringing across the North.
Yes, and it was the women driving that message. The gift book sold at holiday fairs in Boston, and every copy carried the image of the cracked Philadelphia bell on its title page. So when people read Liberty Bell in the 1840s, they thought of abolition, not July 4th parades.
That's a piece of history most people never hear, that women activists helped give the bell its name.
Yes, because for most of history, Anonymous was a woman. And
I thought Anonymous was a hacker.
And they were deliberate about it. They saw the bell as a metaphor. America proclaimed liberty in words, but cracked in practice.
Were there public events around the bell itself?
Yes. Philadelphia abolitionists sometimes gathered stage gatherings near Independence Hall. They'd point to the bell as evidence of hypocrisy. Frederick Douglass himself, in an 1847 speech in Philadelphia, said, quote, "The liberty proclaimed on its side has not been heard by the slave in the rice swamps of Carolina or the sugar fields of Louisiana," unquote.
So the crack became a metaphor for America's broken promises.
Absolutely. William Lloyd Garrison, the Liberals, ran editorials saying, Liberator. I'm going to re-say that because that is not what that says. Yes, in fact, William Lloyd Garrison's Liberator ran editorials saying the bell was a silent, cracked witness to the sin of slavery.
And that metaphor lasted even after slavery was abolished.
Let's talk about the suffrage movement. When it picked up in the late 19th century, In 1876, when the Centennial Exposition was held in Philadelphia, suffragists unveiled their own Justice Bell, a replica of the Liberty Bell with its clapper chain to symbolize women's silence without the vote. Very creative, I might say.
Yeah, that's incredible. I didn't know there was a Justice Bell.
Yes, it toured Pennsylvania counties before the ratification of the 19th Amendment. That's not going anywhere. And its message was clear. Liberty without women wasn't liberty at all, and let us not forget that.
So it's a good thing they didn't decide to take it on tour to the South. So abolitionists, then suffragettes, each redefined what liberty meant by pointing back to the bell.
Right. And here's something rarely mentioned. While famous reformers got the spotlight, countless unnamed African Americans, enslaved and free, were already linking the bell's words to their lives. Oral histories collected by the Federal Writers Project in the 1930s include recollections of formerly enslaved people who remembered hearing church bells as symbols of freedom during the Civil War. Though they didn't name the Liberty Bell, the idea of a bell proclaiming liberty was embedded in their imagination.
So the Liberty Bell was both literal and symbolic. It was a real object and a kind of canvas for people's hopes.
Yes, the abolitionists cemented that. After the Civil War, the cracked bell sat in Philadelphia silent, but its identity as the Liberty Bell was secure. By then, newspaper articles across the country used that name.
So when tourists came in the late 1800s to touch the bell, they weren't just thinking about 1776. They were thinking about slavery, about suffrage, and the unfinished work of liberty.
Yes, and that unfinished work continues. Civil rights marches in the 1960s carried Liberty Bell signs. Martin Luther King Jr. in his 1963 I Have a Dream speech even echoed the verse, "Let freedom ring." He wasn't directly quoting the bell, but the resonance was unmistakable.
So abolitionists not only gave the Liberty Bell its name, they gave it its soul.
That's exactly right. Do you hate me right now? A little bit.
But what church would say an inanimate object could have a soul?
I don't know. Without them, it might have remained just a broken provincial bell in Philadelphia. With them, it became a living symbol of America's contradictions and aspirations. By the late 19th century, the Liberty Bell wasn't just Philadelphia's bell anymore. It was now America's bell.
And the best way to share it was to pack it up and send it out?
That's what they thought. Back beginning in the 1880s, Philadelphia officials agreed to lend the bell to major exhibits across the country. That first big trip, as mentioned before, was to New Orleans for the World's Industrial and Cotton Centennial Exposition.
Did the bell get a lot of beads?
Maybe.
Lucky bell. That sounds risky, sending a cracked, priceless bell hundreds of miles by train.
We already kind of talked about this, but newspapers at the time called it a sacred relic and worried it might shatter. Special wooden supports, as we mentioned earlier, although we didn't say it was wooden supports, and padded rail cars were built. According to the Philadelphia Time on January 6, 1885, thousands showed up to see the bell being loaded on a train. Bands played patriotic music as the train departed.
And when it got to NOLA?
Crowds mobbed it. The New Orleans Daily Picayune. Picayune. I was pretty close.
You said, yeah, but it's one of those things that people will kill you over.
Yeah, Picayune. Reported the people lined up for hours, some kneeling to touch the crack as if it was a holy relic. One reporter wrote, "The old bell is dumb, but the hearts it stirs speaks volumes."
I mean,
it's getting a little creepy.
Yeah, all these people wanting to just rub its crack.
That's weird. It's a little
just a little bit. That's intense, almost like religious devotion.
It was America's first traveling icon, long before the Statue of Liberty had that role. People wept at the sight of it, as mentioned before. There were souvenir postcards and even tiny Liberty Bell-shaped candies were sold in all the big cities it went to.
Eat the crack. Didn't people worry about it breaking more?
Yes, and they were right to. By the 1890s, cracks in its supporting yoke and stress lines in the bell itself were showing. Philadelphia's Evening Telegraph warned in 1895 that further travels, which they did keep doing, may silence the bell forever. So here's a forgotten side of this whole story. Moving the bell wasn't just about ceremonies and speeches. It required the railroad workers, carpenters, riggers, and porters, many of them black laborers in Philadelphia, who carefully hoisted, strapped, and transported the 2,080-pound bell. Their names aren't recorded in souvenir pamphlets, but their sweat and skill made the journey possible.
So once again, the forgotten workers are hidden behind the symbol.
Yes, for example, Pullman porters on those Liberty Bell trains were almost all African Americans. They spent long nights guarding the bell, cleaning up after crowds, and helping passengers who were traveling just to see it.
Imagine the Philadelphia crowds.
They preserved the symbol of liberty while they themselves were denied basic civil rights.
That's powerful, the bell proclaiming liberty carried by men who weren't free in practice.
It's another reminder of the contradictions embodied in the Liberty Bell.
So when did the traveling stop?
After its final trip to San Francisco in 1915. Engineers warned that another journey could break it apart, and they finally decided to listen. The bell returned to Philadelphia and has stayed put ever since.
Wow. Where was it displayed?
Well, you know this. You could have ad-libbed that line. I was just trying to get us to this point, which is Independence Hall. Visitors can get close, even touch the crack, or at least they could. For decades, tourists rubbed the bell's surface for luck, not lunch. Okay.
I mean, if that's what they're into.
So much by the 1940s, parts of the metal had been worn smooth. That's what we were talking about the shine earlier.
Wow, like a lucky penny, but 2,000 pounds.
Yes. So, again, that's why in 1790s, I just flip-flopped some numbers there.
Yes, you did.
So, that's why in 1976, the new glass pavilion was built for the bicentennial. And in 2003, the Liberty Bell Center opened, where it remains today.
So it's stable now?
Stable, but silent. Preservationists have agreed the bell will never ring again. And as mentioned before, they will occasionally tap it for a dull note on very special occasions.
Did anyone protest when the bell was moved into the modern center?
Of course, because this country thrives on protests. Some critics felt it should remain inside Independence Hall, where it had hung for over a century. Others pointed out something crucial. The new Liberty Bell Center sits on ground where archaeologists found remains of the president's house, which is the home where George Washington kept enslaved people during his presidency.
That's a heavy juxtaposition.
It is. For years, activists argued that the Liberty Bell story should acknowledge that it sat yards away from where enslaved men and women labored. Eventually, interpretive exhibits were added to the site to honor their memory.
So even in its preservation, the bell is tied to forgotten voices.
Yes, preservation isn't just about saving the metal, it's about saving the stories, the proud ones and the painful ones.
So today, when we stand in line to see the Liberty Bell, we're standing in a long line of history. Crowds in New Orleans, Chicago, San Francisco, porters on trains, riggers with pulleys, children pressing against the rope.
Every hand that's touched it, every eye that saw it, every worker who lifted it, those are all part of the bell's preservation story.
Dang.
Here's a good myth that we can crack. Paul Revere. Go ahead.
Just shut up. I've heard people say Paul Revere. No, I didn't.
I've never heard this one before.
Some people claim the Liberty Bell rang for every major event, like the deaths of Jefferson, Adams, and...
Not true. By the 1830s, the bells was already too fragile for heavy use, right? And by 1846, it was basically out of commission. So therefore, it did not toll for Jefferson and Adams in 1826, as far as we know, and by Lincoln's death in 1865, it was completely silent.
So the last one was George Washington's in 1846?
Yep. That's the one with any credible evidence. That evidence being the Philadelphia Public Ledger documenting that ringing. And that is supposedly when the crack widened.
I imagine it was always revered, right?
And not quite. In the 1700s and the early 1800s, it was just another bell. Some Philadelphians even disliked its tone. Newspapers described it as dead-sounding. Its celebrity came later, especially after the abolitionists rebranded it.
So the Liberty Bell had to earn its fame.
Yes, its glorious days as a national icon really began in the 1830s and 40s. Before that, it was more background noise.
So why do these myths hang on even when we know the facts, aside from the fact that facts don't matter to a lot of people? Here.
By the 20th century, the Liberty Bell was no longer just a Philadelphia relic. It had become a national and even global symbol of freedom and justice.
For all.
But just as in earlier centuries, different groups interpret it in different ways.
So the same cracked bell that abolitionists embraced in the 1830s was claimed again by later movements.
We talked about the women's suffrage and the Justice Bell, and the Civil Rights Movement. During World War II, the Liberty Bell was tapped to promote the war bonds. We talked about that. And in the Cold War, the Liberty Bell was used as a diplomatic symbol. In 1950, the U.S. commissioned Liberty Bell replicas for every state and many overseas territories. These replicas, made in France, were sent around the world to promote American ideals of democracy.
So in a way, there are hundreds of Liberty Bells.
Yes, most people don't realize that. If you visit state capitals or museums, you'll often find one of those replicas. They were part of the U.S. Information Agency's propaganda strategy.
Ooh.
To show the world that America stood for liberty, even as segregation and inequality persisted at home. The Liberty Bell has never been perfect. It cracked early, its tone was never clear, it rang for kings as well as rebels. It sat silent while millions were enslaved.
And yet, because of those cracks and contradictions, people made it their own. Abolitionists named it, suffragists copied it, civil rights leaders echoed it, immigrants touched it, children dreamed of it. I don't know why. Forgotten laborers hauled it.
Today, the Liberty Bell's silence may be its loudest message. It tells us that liberty is never finished, always fragile, always at risk of breaking, but it also tells us that symbols can be reclaimed.
So when we look at the crack, we're not just seeing damage, we're seeing history. Promises broken, promises renewed.
The Liberty Bell reminds us that freedom is not given once and for all. It has to be proclaimed again and again, throughout all the land, unto all the inhabitants thereof.
And that's why it still matters.
I'm Renee.
And I'm Dan.
Thanks for listening. Bye.